Okay, today we'll be going through the example candidate responses for paper 6 for Cambridge IGCSE Physics 0625/0972. This is for examination from 2021. I am aware of the fact that the syllabus for 2022 has been changed. However, it is very similar to this syllabus that existed last year. The first thing we'll be going through is introduction, and where I will introduce everybody to what is actually going on with this. Second, we have 4 different questions, and we'll be going through those as well. So what technically happening is, let's just read through the introduction first. The main aim of this booklet is to exemplify standards for those teaching Cambridge IGCSE Physics 0625, and to show how different levels of candidates' performances, high, medium, low, relate to the subject's curriculum and the assessment objectives. Basically, this is allotted towards teachers in order to show them how Cambridge actually proceeds its markings. I'm aware that we're given questions and we have marking schemes. However, you never truly know what's going on in the examiner's brain. So this somehow simplifies that query and allows us to look at what the examiner is thinking about while he or she is marking our question paper. In this booklet, candidates' responses has been chosen from June 2021 series to exemplify a range of answers. For each question, the response is annotated with a clear explanation of where and why marks were awarded or omitted. This is followed by the examiner's comments on how the answer could have been improved. In this way, it is possible for you to understand what candidates have done to gain their marks and what they could have done to improve their answers. There's also a list of common mistakes candidates made in the answers for each question. So for each question, like we saw above, we have 4 different questions. For each question, we'll have answers by our candidates. We have answers that range from high, medium to low. Okay, and we've been told why. We have examiners' comments on why they were awarded certain marks, or why they were omitted from certain marks, what they could have done so that the answer could have been improved, and any common mistakes that candidates throughout the entire examinations have done. This document provides illustrative examples of candidates' works with the examiner's commentary. These help teachers to assess the standards required to achieve marks beyond the guidance of the marking scheme. Therefore, in some circumstances, such as where exact answers are required, there will not be such comment. The questions we have are from 0625 June 2021, question paper 61. Now we're shown how to use this booklet. First, we have, on the left-hand side, we have this table called Example Candidates Responses. Low. तो आपको मैंने बताया था we have 4 different questions, and in each question we have a high, medium, and a low. This shows the example of a candidate's response low. That means that this specific candidate performed not so well in their examination, and we have basically a picture, an exact picture of what they wrote, and basically their entire question paper is provided here. And on the right hand side, we have the table of the examiner's comments. As you can see, we have numbers allotted. For example, number 6 for the question, the answer that this person has written for number 6, and the examiner's comment number 6. It specifically doesn't mean that this is question 6, it just means 0.6. Okay, for example, let's read question E. Describe how to extend part C of this experiment to investigate the relationship between the combined resistors of identical resistors connected in parallel and the numbers of resistors. So her answer is, she should add the resistors together, but she already knows that the resistors in parallel are equal, so she must add RP and RS. Now let's see what what the examiner has to say about this. The candidate needs to clearly explain the use of adding resistors in the same circuit one at a time. This person was given 0 out of 2, and we're told why, because she did not explain the need of adding the resistors. Let's see. Answers are by the real candidates in exam conditions. These will show you the type of answers for each level. For each level, we'll be given different answers from different candidates. Discuss and analyze the answers with your learners in the classroom to improve their skills. The examiner's comments. These are alongside the questions. These explain where and why marks were awarded. This helps you to interpret the standard of Cambridge exams so that you can help your learners to refine their exam technique. At the bottom of each different question, we have this area called how the candidates could have improved the answer, number 1, and common mistakes candidates made during this question. For every question, we'll have these 2 at the bottom. For example, for this one, right, this section explains how the candidates could have improved each answer. This helps you to interpret the standard of Cambridge exams and helps your learners to refine the exam technique. For example, the question we were talking about, question E earlier, the candidate needed to describe adding at least other 3 resistors in parallel, one at a time. There were many ways in which this could have been worded, and the candidate would have been given credit for showing that they understood the practical principles and techniques involved. Next, we have common mistakes that the candidates made during this question. Number E, vague answers were common here. Many candidates correctly suggested adding another resistor, but few suggested adding at least 3 more resistors to give a good range of results. Candidates also needed to make it clear that the resistors would be connected in parallel with a set of readings taken each time another resistor was added. Often candidates were not awarded marks because they misread or misinterpreted the questions. Lists the common mistakes candidates made in answering each question. This will help your learners to avoid these mistakes and give them the best chance of achieving the available marks. So we're starting off with question 1. We have 4 different questions, and in each question we're going to go through the candidate example response for high only, so that you actually know what you need to do. If you want to go through the medium and the low as well, I will be providing them. You can pause the video and have a look at it. However, I don't think it's necessary to go through those because you just need to know what's going on with the high responses, because that's exactly what you need to follow. Okay, question number 1. A student investigates the period of a pendulum. Figure 1.1 and 1.2 show the arrangement. Okay, so in figure 1.1, we have a clamp, a bob, we have a floor. We're given a distance D, which shows the distance from the clamp to the floor, and the distance L, which shows the distance from the clamp to the center of the bob. And we also have a X, which is D minus L. Then we're shown in figure 1.2 the clamp and 1 complete oscillation of the bob. The student measures the distance D between the bottom of the clamp and the floor. So the answer is 120 centimeters. So for this, the student has been given 1 out of 1 because it was correct. The distance D remains constant throughout the experiment. He adjusts the length of the pendulum to 70 centimeters. Okay, D is 120 and L is 70. Calculate the distance X between the center of the pendulum and pendulum bob and the floor. Record the value of X in the first row of table 1.1. आपको figure 1.2 में it's very very clear that X is D minus L. It is the distance between L and the leftover D. So this is the best way to get X is D minus L. So we've been told to fill out the table for X, and that's exactly what we did because we've been given the D. We calculated D ourselves, which is 120 centimeters. And we were given D 120 centimeters. This wasn't recorded by the student. D was given. And we were given the measurement for L as well. So what we had to basically do was 120 minus 70 gives us 50. The student displaces the bob slightly and releases it so that it swings. Figure 1.2 shows 1 complete oscillation of the pendulum. He measures and records the time in the first row of table 1.1. The time T for 10 complete oscillation. Calculate and record in the first row of table the period of the pendulum. This is the period the time takes for 1 complete oscillation. Calculate and record in the first row of table 1.1 T squared. Complete the column headings in the table 1.1. So what we have to do is, first of all, as you can see, हमें ऊपर जो columns की headings है उसमें we've just been given X, a small t for time, capital T for total period, and T squared. We haven't been given the SI units. So X, since हमें ऊपर D की measurement centimeter में, L की measurement centimeter में, हम X की measure भी centimeter में ही लिखेंगे. So ऊपर you would just, next to X, you can see that the student had written centimeters, and next to all the t we've been given seconds. However, t squared we've been given second squared, obviously because t is squared. Then we have to calculate the readings for t1, which t, and we have to square it to get the answer for t2. We're told to calculate capital T, which is the time period for 10 complete oscillations, right? Sorry, T, the small t that we've been given, that is a time period for 10 complete oscillations. Capital T is the time period for 1 complete oscillation. So what we have to do is take the value given in the small t and divide it by 10, because that is a complete oscillation for 10 different oscillations. For example, in the first example where our x is 50 centimeters, the total time for 10 oscillations is 16.7 seconds. Therefore, the time for one oscillation is 1.6 seconds. We divided it by 10. And 1.67 squared gives us 2.79. That is how we get our answers for t and t squared. And the candidate has given correct answers, due to which she's been awarded all the marks. And here we have the candidate response high, which is continued. Next question, C. He repeats the procedure using x is equals to 45, 40, 35, and 30 centimeters. He then records the readings in table 1.1. We've been given all of those readings. You don't have to calculate all of them. Plot a graph of t squared against x. You do not need to start your axis at the origin 0, 0. So we've been told that t squared is the y-axis. That's exactly what the student did. She wrote t squared and second squared at the y-axis. And for x-axis, we've been told it is x. And that's what the candidate did, x and centimeter. When you're writing down the heading for your axis, please mention the SI unit. It is very important. And she then used her markings and she completed a graph and she drew her line of best fit. आपको इसमें नज़र आ रहा होगा कि उसने markings बहुत करीब की हैं. We were told at the beginning that you do not need to start your axis at the origin 0, 0. However, this candidate still started y-axis at 0. She did not need to, but she chose to. And I think that's why her graph appears very small. Her markings, जैसे आपको होता है कि ग्राफ आधा हो, आधे से ज़्यादा ग्राफ यूज़ होना चाहिए, बट आपको नज़र आ रहा है कि यहाँ पर उसने बेसिकली 2 ब्लॉक्स यूज़ किए हैं, on the y-axis and on the x-axis. This is not half the graph. She hasn't used half the graph. Let's see what the examiner's comments are. Marks for C, she's been given 3 out of 4. Why has she been given 3 out of 4? ये हमें नीचे पता चलेगा on how the candidates could have improved their answer. C. Scales that produce plots that occupied at least half the graph grid in both directions were required. As I said, उसने स्केल को बहुत बड़ा किया हुआ था and at least half the graph should have been used, which it wasn't. That's why one of her marks was deduced. D. State whether the graph line shows that t squares is proportional to x. Give a reason for your answer. Her statement was, it is not proportional to x. Reason, as t squared decreases, x increases. The mark we were given for D was 0 out of 1. That was, according to the examiner, that was incorrect, because the student reports that it is indirectly proportional. Okay, the next one, E. Explain why timing 10 oscillations gives a more accurate result for the period T than timing 1 oscillation. First, let me clarify, there has been no, how we've been given how the candidate could have improved the answer. We haven't been given such a reasoning for D, because उसका एक बहुत हमें ऊपर ही mention किया गया था. अगर उनको कोई specific answer चाहिए, for example, इसमें they just needed to say that it is proportional, for example. That's exactly what they needed. They don't need to provide a reason why they did not give you the mark. This was according to marking scheme. जो ये हम अभी कर रहे हैं ना, this is outside of marking scheme. ये चीज़ें marking scheme में mention नहीं है. But अगर कोई चीज़ exact marking scheme वाली उनको answer चाहिए, they're not gonna write it down here. Okay, that's why we weren't given an exact reason for D. E. Explain why timing 10 oscillations gives a more accurate result for the time period T than timing 1 oscillation. The answer the candidate gave us reduces effect of error of reaction time. This is something that I think every student should just by heart, क्योंकि कुछ questions में ऐसे questions repeat किए जाते हैं and you just need the marking scheme वाला exact answer. You just need to like know it off by heart and write that down everywhere. Starting or stopping, stopwatch error spreads over the 10 oscillations. And she was given 1 mark out of 1 mark for E. So the total marks that she was awarded was 9 out of 11. Uska 1 mark काटा गया for the graph because she did not use at least half the scale from both the axes, and 1 was for D. She mentioned it incorrectly. This is the middle. We're not going to be going through this, but if anybody wants to pause and go through this, and you can do that then. This is for low. आपको नज़र आएगा कि हर स्टूडेंट ने एक अलग ग्राफ बनाया हुआ है because obviously this is high, medium, low. You're going to see a range of different answers. यहाँ पर we've been given low में आपको नज़र आ रहा है सबसे ज़्यादा improvements और सबसे ज़्यादा common mistakes हमें provide की गई हैं. ठीक है, you can read through these also if you want. Next we have question 2. Example candidate response high. Question 2. A student investigates resistance. Figure 2.1 shows the circuit she uses. Is circuit में we've been given the power supply, a switch, an amp meter, we've been given a resistor, and a voltmeter which is parallel to the resistor. She records the potential difference V1 across the resistor and current I1 in the circuit. The meters are shown in figure 2.2 and figure 2.3. Write down the readings, include the units for the potential difference, current or resistance, were appropriate in all part of the questions. Say, तो यहाँ पर हमें images दिए हुए of the voltmeter and the amp meter. She just had to record them down, and she recorded them correctly, for which she was given 3 out of 3. Calculate the resistance. आपको resistance का formula भी provided है. तो जो आपकी V1 है उसको आपने I1 से divide करना है. She gave 4.8, which is correct, because of which she was marked 1 out of 1. Next, we've been given she connects the second resistance series with the first resistor. She connects the voltmeter across both the resistors and records the potential difference V2 across both resistors and current in the circuit. तो इसकी values उसको already provide की गई हैं. ऊपर वाले में उसने खुद ने values जो ना निकाली थी और खुद ने resistance निकाली थी, but यहाँ पर उसको voltage और current की value दोनों दी हुई थी. उसने बस जो ना resistor की value निकाली है, that's it. तो इसके लिए भी she's been given 1 mark out of 1. Okay, next. She records the second resistor in parallel with the first resistor. She connects a voltmeter across both the resistors, and she records the potential difference V3 across the resistors and the current in the circuit. तो उसकी भी values उसको provide की गई है. She had to find out the resistors once again using V3 and I3, and she found that as well. And उसके लिए भी उसको mark दिया गया because she did that correctly. Next for D. यहाँ पर आपको नज़र आ रहा है कोई issue है, तभी हमें marking दी गई है orange में. D. Complete the circuit diagram to show the circuit she uses in part C. जहाँ पर हमें बताया हुआ है, ठीक है, कि हमें बताया गया कि उसने resistor लगाया parallel में, ठीक है. Let's see what the examiner has to say. The circuit diagram is drawn correctly, but the way the voltmeter symbol is displaced is incorrect. इसका क्या मतलब हुआ कि वोल्ट मीटर पे आपको नज़र आ रहा है उसने पहले तो लाइन बनाई है फिर वोल्ट मीटर का ऐड किया, ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए. उसके लिए भी उन्होंने 1 मार्क काट दिया because this is a drawing thing, because it's a circuit where she has to draw. You have to be very careful about these things because देखिए उन्होंने बेचारे को फजूल में मार्क काट दिया just because there's a line drawn across the V. I feel like this is something that people don't realize कि इसमें भी marks करते हैं, but this is Cambridge. You have to be perfect in everything. Next, we've been given describe how to extend part C of this experiment to investigate the relationship between the combined resistance of identical resistors connected in parallel and the number of resistors. So इसमें she's been told जो ये वाला example है ना E and F हमने ऊपर introduction में किया था. Let's see what she says. Combine resistor 3 in series and record the potential difference in current, and then repeat the experiment with the resistors connected in parallel. Finally, compare the data. Let's see what the examiner has said. The candidate correctly suggests using additional resistors, but needs to be clear whether they are placed in series or parallel. So she's given 1 out of 2 because she hasn't clarified on whether they need to be in series or parallel. Next, she's been asked to draw a variable resistor, which she has done correctly, so she's been given 1 out of 1 for that one. Next, we've been told how the candidate could have improved the answer for D. The candidate needed to draw the voltmeter symbol with care so that there was no line through it. Yes, मैंने आपको बताया, they subtracted a mark for that. E, the candidate correctly suggested using more resistors, but needed to make it clear that at least 3 more resistors had to be added one at a time, and that these resistors needed to be connected in parallel and not in series. Next, we have candidate example response for middle for question 2. You can pause and go ahead and have a look at it if you want to. This is the improvement for middle. Candidate example response low. And obviously इसमें सबसे ज़्यादा आपको improvements or common mistakes मिलेंगी. Next, we have question 3, example candidate response high. A student investigates the refraction of light through a transparent block. Figure 3.1 shows the transparent block ABCD on the student's ray trace sheet. ठीक है. We have a transparent block ABCD. ठीक है. This is a rectangular block, and we're measuring the refraction of light. A. Draw a normal at the center of the side AB. That's exactly what the student did. She drew a normal exactly between AB. Continue the normal so that it reaches the bottom of the ray trace sheet. Label the normal NL. That's what the student did. She labeled it correctly, NL. Label the point Q where NL crosses AB. तो जहाँ पे NL ने AB को touch किया है, वहाँ पे Q उसने exactly mark किया है. So she's been given 1 out of 1 for this. Next, we've been told, draw a line EF parallel to CD and 2 centimeters below CD. That's exactly what she did. CD के 2 centimeter नीचे उसने EF draw किया है. Then she's been told, label the point J where NL crosses EF. That's exactly what she did. Draw a line GH parallel to CD 7 centimeters below CD. Not 7 centimeters below EF, 7 centimeters below ED. Therefore, वो 5 centimeters below EF होगा. Label the point K where NL crosses GH. So that's exactly what we did. ठीक है. And she's been given marks. She's been given 1 out of 1 for all of these. 4 points का उसको 1 mark मिला था. ठीक है. Then C. 1. Draw a line PQ at an angle I is equals to 30 degrees to the normal on the left hand side of the normal above the block. So NL के left hand side पे I के 30 degrees angle से उसने line draw की, and she's been awarded the mark for that. ठीक है. The student places 2 pins P1 and P2 on the line PQ, and figure 3.1 is not drawn to full size. Suggest a suitable distance for pins P1 and P2 in this type of experiment. तो P1 और P2 उसने किस तरीके से draw की होगी, उसके लिए हमें we just have to give an estimate. आपको नज़र आ रहा है कि P3 and P4 भी दिए हुए, उनकी distance देखिए, उससे मिलती जुलती distance ही होनी चाहिए obviously. तो इस वजह से P1 और P2 के बीच में she has estimated this distance, which was correct according to the examiner, so they provided a mark for that. Let's see D, because यहाँ पर उसके marks subtract किए गए. The student observes the images of P1 and P2 through the side CD of the block. She adjusts her line of sight until the images of P1 and P2 appear behind the other. She places a pin P3 on the line EF and a pin P4 on the line GH so that the P3 and images of P1 and P2 seen through the block appear behind the pin 4. मतलब कि उसने, जैसे मैं आपको समझाती हूँ, DC है ना, उसके आगे she was facing it and she was looking through the block. उसने P1 और P2 को इस लाइन PQ पे प्लेस किया इस तरीके से कि वो एक दूसरे के पीछे नज़र आए, मतलब कि P2 प्लेस किया हुआ तो पीछे P1 नज़र नहीं आ रहा, वो उसके बिल्कुल एग्जैक्ट पीछे हो. देन उसने P3 एंड P4 भी इस तरीके से प्लेस किया कि ये लोग सब उसकी आई, आपको नज़र आ रही है आई कहाँ ड्रॉ की गई है, राइट एट द बॉटम ऑफ दिस फिगर 3.1. वहाँ से ऐसा लगे कि ये सारी पिन्स एक ही पिन है, कि एक दूसरे के पीछे इस तरीके से प्लेस की गई हैं. On figure 3.1 measures the distance A of line J to P3. ठीक है, A is from J to P3. तो आपको नज़र आ रहा है कि J से लेके P3 तक लाइन उसने J है और P3 है. आपको नज़र आ रहा है कि ये दिस इज़ ऑन द लाइन ER. ठीक है, तो इसने कितनी मेजरमेंट लिखी है, लिखी इसने 2.21 millimeters. Let's see what the examiner says. The candidate gives a value that is out of the range of acceptable responses. Mark for D1 0 out of 1. मतलब कि आपको पता है ना, मार्किंग स्कीम में एक रेंज दी गई होती है. फॉर एग्जाम्पल हम दे विल एक्सेप्ट फ्रॉम अराउंड 25 millimeters to 35 millimeters. And she has given 21 millimeters, which is out of the marking scheme. So she has been given a mark for that. अब हम देखते हैं कि इसने ये गलती क्यों की है. आपको नज़र आ रहा है बहुत क्लियरली कि उसकी जो नॉर्मल है ना वो क्रिकेट है, उसकी नॉर्मल स्ट्रेट नहीं बनाई है, इसने टुवर्ड्स द साइड बनाई है. और आई हैव नो आइडिया कि उसने J से मेजरमेंट किया है P3 तक या नॉर्मल से मेजरमेंट किया है P3. उसने जहाँ J लिखा है वहाँ से P3 तक उससे मेजरमेंट की है नॉर्मल से होनी चाहिए. आपको नज़र ये भी आएगा कि जो नॉर्मल है वो एग्जैक्ट AB के ब्लॉक के सेंटर में नहीं ड्रॉ की गई है. मैं आपको जूम करके दिखाती हूँ. देखिए, थोड़ी सी टुवर्ड्स द राइट हैंड साइड ड्रॉ की गई. तो इसमें बेस्ट क्या होगा कि आप अपना रूलर प्लेस करें और A और B की लेंथ लें और उसको एग्जैक्ट 2 से डिवाइड करके वहाँ पर नॉर्मल ड्रॉ करें. दैट वुड बी अ बेस्ट बैट, बिकॉज इसमें आपके रेंजेस के बहुत इश्यूज आते हैं और बच्चे फजूल मार्क्स लूज़ कर रहे होते हैं बिकॉज दे हैव दे डोंट नो कि रेंज क्या होगी ऑब्वियसली. तो इसमें आपको बहुत केयरफुल रहना पड़ता है. और GH भी देखें आप किस तरीके से उसने ड्रॉ किया है. आपको नज़र आ रहा है GH किस तरीके से ड्रॉ किया है. इट ऑल्सो अपीयर्स थोड़ा ऊपर नीचे. ये लाइंस बहुत क्लियरली ड्रॉ करनी चाहिए बिकॉज इसमें रेंजेस के बहुत इशू आते हैं. ऊपर भी आपको नज़र आया इसकी ड्राइंग में ही मार्क गया है और यहाँ पर भी ड्राइंग की वजह से ही इसका मार्क गया है. सो दिस किड इज़ अ शार्प किड ऑब्वियसली, बट ही और शी डजंट अंडरस्टैंड द फैक्ट कि आपको अपनी ड्राइंग्स और मार्किंग्स बहुत क्लियर रखनी पड़ती हैं, इसमें मार्क्स जाते हैं. For D2 on figure 3.1 measure the distance B again. ठीक है, उसने एक ऐसी वैल्यू दी which is out of the range of acceptable responses, and A upon B. For D3 we've been told to give B upon A. Although उसका B और A दोनों incorrect हैं, ठीक है, लेकिन B upon A की उसने कैलकुलेशन सही की है. So that's why she's been given 2 out of 2. ठीक है. E. Draw one precaution that you would take in this type of experiment to produce an accurate race trade. Draw using thin pencil line. That is correct. ठीक है, because अगर आप बहुत thick line draw करेंगे, it's going to be difficult to erase it and then put it back in, so it's going to be less accurate. Next, F. A student plans to test the suggestion that in the experiment B upon A is a constant for all possible values of I. हमने ऊपर I में कौन सी वैल्यू ली थी? 30. List variable values of I that the student could use. Obviously 30 के अलावा दूसरी values इस student ने लिखा है 20, 25, 35, 40, 45. So let's see what the examiner has to say about it. ये 4 है तो यहाँ पर 4. The candidate suggests that sufficient additional angles of incidence, but the range is too restricted. ठीक है, आपको इसमें इस स्टूडेंट की कोई गलती नहीं है. ऑब्वियसली उसने आई थिंक पहले इस तरीके की मार्किंग स्कीम पढ़ी ही नहीं होगी. दैट्स व्हाई शी डजंट रियलाइज़ कि इस तरीके की रेंज बहुत रिस्ट्रिक्टेड होती है. फॉर एग्जांपल क्योंकि हमारे पास 30 है, देन आई थिंक फ्रॉम अराउंड 20 to 40 is fine, but she also included 45. That's a little out of range. Therefore, she has been इसके लिए 1 mark उसका deduct किया गया. How the candidate could have improved the answer? For D1 and D2, the candidate gave values that are just out of the range of possible responses. The position of normal drawn by the candidate wasn't close enough to obtain the mark for A. मैंने आपको बताया था कि इसकी normal सही तरीके से ड्रॉ नहीं की गई थी, but not close enough to produce a sufficient accuracy for D1 or D2. For F, the candidate suggested a sufficient number of additional angles of the incidence, but a range of value of at least 30 degrees was needed. I guess, okay. फिर हमारे पास ये क्वेश्चन 3 का मिडिल रिस्पॉन्स है. ये मिडिल रिस्पॉन्स कंटिन्यू है. इसमें भी आपके लिए जो ना एग्जामिनर्स का वो पढ़ना, आई थिंक इट्स अ गुड थिंग. देन वी हैव द कैंडिडेट्स low response, और इसमें आपको ऑब्वियसली सबसे ज़्यादा आंसर इम्प्रूवमेंट्स और कॉमन मिस्टेक्स मिलेंगी. नेक्स्ट वी हैव क्वेश्चन 4 which is the last question, and we have high. Okay, a student investigates the rate of cooling in air of heated blocks made of different metals. The temperature of each block is increased by placing it in hot water. Plan an experiment to investigate how the rate of cooling depends on metal from which each block is made. ठीक है, हमें rate of cooling को investigate करना है. ठीक है, जो हर ब्लॉक जो मेटल का ब्लॉक है उसके मटेरियल पे डिपेंड करता है. The following apparatus is available to the student. You've been given different apparatuses, and उसके अलावा हमें बेसिकली पूरा एक्सपेरिमेंट प्लान करना है. List any additional apparatuses required. Explain how briefly you would carry out the investigation. Include the measurements you would take. Key variables को ड्रॉ करना है. टेबल की हेडिंग्स को ड्रॉ करना है. Explain how you would use the results to reach a conclusion. ये सब चीज़ें आपको करनी है. ठीक है, तो यहाँ पर हमें बताया हुआ है ओके. अब कैंडिडेट ने किस तरीके से लिखा था और हम देखेंगे कि एग्जामिनर की क्या इस पर कॉमेंट्स हैं. आपको नज़र आ रहा है कि इसने एग्जैक्ट बताया हुआ है कि और कौन से एपरेटसेस चाहिए. ही मेंशन अ स्टॉप वॉच, अ मेजरिंग सिलेंडर, थर्मामीटर. उसके बाद उसने पूरा का पूरा जो है लिखा हुआ है कि किस तरीके से वो इन्वेस्टिगेशन करेगी. 400 centimeters of hot water into the metal cylinder made for aluminium. Record initial temperatures of the hot water and start stopwatch. Record new temperature every 30 seconds. Repeat experiment with different metal cylinders of the same size. उसने टाइम इंटरवल भी मेंशन किया. वैसे मेंशन किया कि हम डिफरेंट मेटल्स यूज़ करेंगे सेम साइज़ के. Variables to constant रखने, volume of water, room temperature, time to record temperature, surface area of cylinders. These are all very very good answers. उसके बाद उसने टेबल प्रोवाइड किया हुआ है. उसमें उसने हेडिंग्स के साथ साथ अपने SI यूनिट्स भी प्रोवाइड किए हैं. Like I said, that's very important. Then we've been told the metal that allowed temperature of the water to decrease the most with increasing time have the highest cooling rate. And उसने अपनी एक equation बनाई हुई है. Cooling time is change in temperature upon time. इसमें क्या लिखा हुआ है? The candidate successfully covers all the marking points other than marking point 2. Total marks awarded 6 out of 7. How the candidate was, it could have improved the answer. Marking point 2 क्या था हमारे पास यहाँ पर? Marking point 2 था explain briefly how you would carry out the investigation including the measurements you would take. इस पर उसने mark loss किया. और क्या लिखा हुआ है? The candidate was required to state clearly that each block needed to be immersed in hot water and then removed, and then allowing it to cool down in air. Marking point 2. In spite of all of this, the other points was successfully covered. तो ये सब उसने कंप्लीट किया except for marking point 2. तो उसके लिए उसका सिर्फ एक मार्क रिमूव किया गया. ठीक है, then we have example for candidate responses middles. We have middle continued here. यहाँ पर आपको नज़र आया कि कुछ ज़्यादा ही गलतियाँ निकाली हैं. So even if you go through these, it's really not a bad idea to just understand what the examiner is thinking. यहाँ पर improvement के कुछ ज़्यादा ही हमारे पास obviously points हैं. एंड लो हमारे पास आ गया. उसमें ऑब्वियसली सबसे ज़्यादा हमारे पास इम्प्रूवमेंट्स के पॉइंट्स दिए जाएंगे. सो इट इज़ द बेस्ट कि आप ऑब्वियसली सब पढ़ें, बट मोस्ट इम्पॉर्टेंटली आपके लिए होता है हाई पढ़ें, ताकि अगर आप मीडियम और लो को पढ़ें उसमें थोड़ी सी कन्फ्यूजन हो जाती है कि अच्छा फिर आप एग्ज़ाम हॉल में बैठे सोच होते हैं कि ये मैंने मीडियम में देखा था, या मैंने ये लो में देखा था, या मैंने हाई में देखा था. सो आई जस्ट प्रेफर कि आप हाई करें. बट अगर आपको मीडियम और लो में भी देखना है, in order to just make sure you're covering everything, that's also a really good idea. Thank you guys for joining us today, and inshallah हम paper 4 का भी इसी तरीके से I will try to upload it as soon as possible. Thank you.